Okay, cool. We are live as I'm finding out very quickly immediately that a premium account on X is required to create live broadcasts on their platform, and I'm not paying for that. I'm not paying for that. Hello everybody. Welcome as I quickly just start. Give me a second to send out the link now to Twitter and Instagram because I was supposed to go to stream in two other places. Uh I was supposed to stream on Twitter as well, but try Twitter as well, but apparently I can't do that without a subscription. But now I can see comments and everything directly through StreamYard. We're doing this a little bit of a different way. This should be a much smoother uh, video process as I send out the link. Give me a second. This is not the exact same level of production quality that maybe some other streams have, but we're working on it. Again, this is first time doing any sort of streaming on this YouTube channel in a long time. So everything is a work in progress currently. Make sure I have the stream properly. Bear with me, please. Feel free to ask questions as you wait here as we get going. Welcome back. Thank you. Yes. as we as it's you were here obviously for the first much lower quality stream. Hopefully the video and the audio sound a lot better now than it did on the first attempt. Seems good so far. Fantastic. Basically, just to give you a little bit of inside baseball, this is the same. I'm using the same software that Convo, Sakaris, and Price use. And their streams always look great. So I'm assuming for this one, ours will be just the same. I can't stream on Twitter because, again, you need to have the premium account, and I'm not giving Elon Musk any money. So we're just going to have to stream on YouTube, which is fine by me because I want to grow this channel. For anyone who might be joining as we start here, welcome to the first ever live stream, second attempt at a first ever live stream in about 5-6 years on the Lock of the Crease YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Lachlan. I am a writer for Canucks Army. I've been covering the Vancouver Canucks for the last decade on various different platforms, including this one right here, where I do the Stanchies pregame videos. I write the Stanchies over on Canucks Army. I am Wyatt Arndt's backup. And you can, if you like videos like this, first of all, please make sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'm planning on doing a lot more videos like this, including the one you're watching right now. This video is going to be I'm streaming currently, but after we're done here, I'm going to take it and cut it down and make it a more concise regular video for the channel for people who miss it, who weren't able to take part in the live stream today. So with that in mind, let's not waste too much time here as I make sure that we've get everything going before I really get into the meat of what we're talking about. All right. Yep. Treats are out. Treats are out. Fantastic. Okay. So we're going to talk about the biggest news in the hockey world, a blockbuster trade. The Vancouver Canucks have traded captain and defenseman, one of the greatest players of all time, Quinn Hughes, to the Minnesota Wild in exchange for forwards Marco Rossi and Liam Ogren, as well as defenseman Zeev Byam and a first-round pick in the 2026 NHL draft. I am shocked that we are talking about this and that we're doing this video so soon. I really didn't think that I would be making a video like this for a little while. I thought we would be talking about this maybe closer to January, closer to the Olympics. This all came together so fast, and it seemed to come together over the course of the last week. The Canucks obviously lost last night to the Buffalo Sabres, and that is a kind of game that really makes you have an about face and really think about the future of your organization. And it seems like this whole process really sped up over the last day. There didn't even seem to be much smoke about a trade coming today. Like, it didn't sound like anything was imminent until it happened. So the fact that we're talking about this today is very shocking. I'm still kind of processing the fact that this is the end of an era. We're going to talk about three different things today. One being the trade itself, one being Quinn's legacy in Vancouver, and third, just where the Vancouver Canucks are at now. And we'll start by talking a little bit about, again, they lose to the Buffalo Sabres last night. I was on Stanchies duty, and one of the things I wrote about very in the intro was this is a kind of game where it really it basically is a push or shove kind of moment. It is the type of game, the type of loss to a team that hadn't lost in regulation for 8 months that makes you go, we need to change something. Something has to give. We cannot just maintain the status quo, because we would not be doing right by this team by keeping things the way they are when you lose to a team like the Sabres, a Buffalo team that has not been in the playoff conversation for the last decade and a half. It doesn't look like they're going to be in the playoff conversation this year either. And yet they are better than the Canucks, or at the very least on par. And this is a Canucks team that was, in the playoffs a couple years ago. And the fact that they are now on par with the Sabres tells you that how far they have fallen. It tells you that they are a completely different team than the one that lost to the Edmonton Oilers in Game 7 in the second round 3 seasons ago. And you look at around the rest, especially of the Western Conference, you look at teams like Chicago, you look at teams like Utah, San Jose, Anaheim, all of these teams that the Canucks were firmly ahead of not all that long ago, who are now undeniably better and undeniably in a better position to compete long term. The Canucks have been kind of going through this cycle of believing that they are competitive enough that they can kind of just keep adding bits and pieces and that would be enough. But the fact is that's not the case. They're not a team that's capable of being more than just a middle of the pack team at best. And that's assuming that everything goes well for them. So the fact that they are now sitting dead last in the National Hockey League is a statement of just how far they've fallen and how uncompetitive they truly are at this point. With the Hughes trade, I will say, let's talking about the trade itself. I'm shocked that, first of all, that Minnesota was the team to pony up. I was very adamant that I didn't think it was going to be as simple as, oh, he's just going to go to the Devils. This is he wants to play with Jack and Luke, and that would be it. I really thought that they were going to trade him somewhere else, more likely, especially because of, there was the Devils were going to be able to get a better deal out of the Canucks than any other team. It obviously, we know now that it was very clear that Hughes was not going to sign an extension. He was not going to be part of the solution long-term in Vancouver because the Canucks hadn't built a good enough team around him to make that happen. And they've decided to pull the trigger now, ahead of the Christmas break, ahead of a big road trip coming up. I believe they even, if I'm not, I don't know when they face Minnesota again. Do they face Minnesota again at all this season? As I'm scanning the thing. No, they do not. That honestly, that might have played into it as well. The fact that they don't play the Wild again all year might tell you why they went in that direction partially as well. Um, with this trade, they definitely got, I think, overall good value. Like, if we're looking at this from a pure trade standpoint, the Canucks got good value for Quinn Hughes. A first overall pick is nothing to sneeze at. That's going to be crucial. Now, it is crucial that they keep that pick, as we know the Canucks are prone to do. They are a team that loves to get a first round pick and then go, you know what? We're going to flip this for someone to help us win now. Trading Quinn Hughes should already tell them where they're at right now, which is the fact that they're not going to be competing anytime soon. You don't trade Quinn Hughes and then get better out of that trade, or at least get better out of that trade immediately. You are making that trade because you don't feel you're going to be competitive anywhere in the short term. And yet, we've already heard today from a tweet courtesy of Dan Murphy that they are already kind of throwing that idea out there of what if we maybe traded a pick for some good young player? We like these under 25 guys. Why don't we just trade them? If other teams are willing to part with an under 25 guy for a first round pick, it kind of should tell you that maybe it's not the kind of player you should be picking up right now. Like, you look at like the different circumstances, but you look at the Lucas Reichel trade. You look at anytime the Canucks have picked up like a reclamation project for a price, usually there's a reason why teams are giving up on a player that young so quickly. And I would hazard a guess that if the Canucks find themselves in a position where a team is willing to give them one of their under 25 players for a first round pick, odds are there's a reason for that. There's a reason that they're already willing to part with this player. It's not like when you draft a player yourself. The Canucks are far better off keeping that pick and not letting it go and not trying to, again, take a shortcut. The Canucks are love to take shortcuts, and the last two regimes have absolutely bet the farm on these. Oh, we could turn this team around, no problem, nice and fast. And as we get a message in here from the chat, in addition, this draft class is said to be stacked, and so far, I think they've done a good job in scouting and drafting to this point. They do a decent enough job. I wouldn't necessarily say they've like hit a bunch of like home runs in late round picks, because that's really where you make your bread and butter as a front office. In a way, the first round picks, the second round picks, the third round guys, I should say just first and second. For those first and second round picks, those should be inherently gimmies. It's where your draft class shines is or your scouting shines is when you can find players in the late rounds. You see other teams have been able to mine gems out of the later rounds. They don't just kind of throw that pick away on somebody they think might be decent or a reclamation project, or if everything works out. These other teams have done a really good job of mining diamonds in the rough. You look at a team like Dallas, they have a bunch of players on their roster that have come out of later rounds, I believe, and they built a really good team out of it. The Canucks have found some decent players. They've definitely been better at the draft floor in recent years, especially under this regime, than they were in the past. And they've definitely, developed some good players through Abbotsford as well. Like, you look at a guy like Max Sasson, who has come out of nowhere to become a really good part of the Canucks. Elias Pettersson has turned into a pretty good player. Tom Wielander is developing nicely. Like, all of these players seem to be turning into something decent. And the Canucks need to be willing to steer completely into that mode of developing those players and turning them into a cohesive unit together, and bringing a whole group up as a unit, as opposed to this kind of duct taping over issues as they come up, which has been the problem with the Canucks, frankly, even into this month. There was a quote that I would like to talk about that I found very interesting from Jim Rutherford here. From the press release, quote, "We would like to thank Quinn for his time with the Vancouver Canucks. Quinn is a great person, a great player, and one of the greatest Canucks of all time. with circumstances surrounding JT and now Quinn, we are fortunate to acquire these very good young players from Minnesota. They will be a key part of the rebuild that we are currently in, giving us a bright future moving forward. Now, there's a couple things that stand out to me here. Number one is the mention of JT Miller in and kind of tying him in with Quinn Hughes. JT Miller, for a player, has come up many times, in the last calendar year since they have traded him. They have routinely brought him up as a reason why the team is not competitive, like an excuse. We knew that this was an issue with JT Miller, that there was locker room issues to sort out with Miller and Pettersson long before the Canucks were in the playoffs, made the playoffs a couple years ago. So the idea that this just sprang up out of nowhere is wrong. It's not true. They're kind of using it as a scapegoat for why the team has been bad, and they have no right to. This has been a known thing with Miller and the rift that in the Canucks organization with him and it was, I believe, Horvat at one point. It became Pettersson. This is nothing new. And the idea that they can kind of use this as an excuse is ridiculous. And looking in the chat, it took me a while to find. We do play the Wild one more time, April 2nd. As I'm looking at my calendar on my screensaver, you are correct. There is an April 2nd game, but a good ways away. It is one of their last games of the season. By which point we'll have a very good idea of where the Canucks are headed and what kind of a team they are. This is post trade deadline. That is post Olympics. Very much they'll be locked in or very close to locking in their draft lottery status. And so that game will definitely be interesting. Quinn Hughes doesn't come back to Vancouver this year. That'll be something that'll be a treat for next year. Thanks so much to Jandals33 in the chat for that. But okay, we talked about JT. The other thing is the quote, "They will be a key part of the rebuild that we are currently in." I would like to ask Jim Rutherford, what rebuild that we are currently in? You're saying that they're saying that like we've been in this rebuild already. Like everybody knew that this has been a rebuild that we were going for. First of all, he said the word rebuild. That is, I will give them that. They said the word rebuild. The Canucks have always shied away from ever using the word rebuild. They're so scared to admit that they need to rebuild and restart the roster. So I won't gloss over the fact that they are using that language now. What I do take issue with is this idea that this rebuild has been underway, and didn't just start literally when they traded Quinn Hughes. They have been making all the moves in previous years of a team that doesn't think they need to rebuild. They're a team that is a few pieces away from competing, that they could be very much in the conversation as a playoff team. Maybe not a contender, but certainly in the wild card race, certainly a team that should be fighting with the top dogs in the Western Conference to crash the postseason party. The idea that just trying to say that the Canucks are currently in the middle of a rebuild is news to everyone else. And they have definitely, it's the never ending retool. They have consistently cycled. And this goes far beyond this management and this front office. This starts with ownership. This starts with Francesco Aquilini and the Aquilini family being very wary and very unwilling to rebuild the roster in any meaningful blow it up type of way. This goes back all the way to 2013 when Mike Gillis looked at a team that had been swept by the San Jose Sharks in the first round of the playoffs and said, this team is not good enough. We need to make moves now to improve the roster for the longer term. We need to think big picture. And the Aquilini said, no, we don't want to go that direction. You have to make it work with this core, with this team now. And that's how we ended up with 1 year of John Tortorella. That's how we ended up with the very unfortunate breakup with Roberto Luongo. As you can see the jersey in the background, that wound is still open here in this building right now. Things like every single, like the Louis Erickson signing. It's things like signing Jay Beagle and Antoine Roussel, players who have done their best, but very clearly the Vancouver Canucks were not a team that should be competing for the playoffs. For the better part of the past decade, Jim Benning, willing to buy out OEL, but not willing to take the hit of a rebuild. Rest in peace. Yes, OEL, another great example. They got a good player out of it, Connor Garland, but all of those were moves that were made by a franchise and an organization that is unwilling to take the long approach, to do the tried and true method of restarting from scratch and slowly and methodically putting together all of the bits and pieces, but building a foundation that could last through the long term. Every other team that has won the Stanley Cup in recent years, outside of maybe the outlier of Vegas, and even they kind of fall into this category of building from a core, of taking a core that they have methodically and very carefully put together and building it up over time, adding good depth at the right times, signing the right depth players, and not getting too married to those players as well. And that has been the calling card of every Stanley Cup contender, every Stanley Cup champion over the last decade. And frankly, through the entire lockout era, post lockout era of the National Hockey League. The Canucks have consistently said, we're a playoff team and we're competing for the postseason, and accidentally ended up as a lottery team all of those times. And there are still people who look at the Quinn Hughes draft and say, well, they were rebuilding when they did that. No, they thought they were good enough to make the playoffs. They just accidentally ended up in the bottom of the NHL standings and wound up with Quinn Hughes as a consolation prize. Same thing for Elias Pettersson, all those other drafts. You look at their draft history, all of the years where they missed the playoffs under Jim Benning, many of the years under Jim Rutherford, they have more or less just made the picks they've gotten, give or take a trade here and there. Whereas the teams that are truly rebuilding have stockpiled as many draft picks as humanly possible. They have tried to get as many kicks at the can in the draft as humanly possible, because you know that the team's not going to be competitive anytime soon anyway. You might as well try to build and establish a core of as many young talents as you possibly can in the first and second and third rounds with as much draft capital as humanly possible, trading out veterans at their peak of value, being willing to cut bait with players when necessary. And the Canucks haven't been willing to do that over the course of however many years. They thought once they got Pettersson and Hughes, and you could throw guys like Podkolzin and Höglander in there as well, that they were done. The heavy lifting was over, and that came to be, it clearly wasn't the case. We fell into the lottery those times too, got so lucky those guys fell to us. Exactly. They are lucky they got the players they did, because they, again, felt they were more competitive than they actually were. And they didn't even see that those picks and those instances of falling into the draft lottery as a red flag. And now here we are, 15, about, I'm sorry, not 15. So here we are about a decade later, and the Canucks have 2 playoff runs to show for Quinn Hughes' time in Vancouver. The number that keeps coming back to me when it comes to Quinn Hughes is the number 8, which is how many seasons Quinn Hughes spent in Vancouver. The majority of those years, the Canucks missed the playoffs. And you could frankly argue that the Canucks only made the playoffs on their own merit once in Quinn Hughes' time here. The year that the 2020 bubble, the COVID pandemic, they were falling out of that playoff race by the end. They were very lucky in a way that COVID kind of saved them from, they were trending back downwards as March was wearing on. It seemed like there was a good chance they weren't going to make the postseason at all. And they luckily found themselves in the play-in game instead. So looking at everything that's happened over that time, they had all of that time to build a true contender around Quinn Hughes. They had all of the time in the world seeing this franchise defenseman fall into their lap and rather than building a serious title caliber roster, a roster capable of not just making the playoffs, but truly contending with the best teams in the National Hockey League. Instead, they took shortcut after shortcut. They traded for guys like Oliver Ekman-Larsson on a terrible cap hit, just to get a player like Connor Garland out of it. They traded Bo Horvat as opposed to keeping him on the roster to try and fill out their back end. They brought in JT Miller on trading a first round pick to get him in a move that, while it did work out for him on the ice, clearly did not work over the long term and for the betterment of the organization. And you think about all of those first round picks, all of those other young players they give up the opportunity to select that might have been coming into their prime right now. Like, whether or not you wanted Dylan Gunther out of the OEL trade, just imagine if they had him right now and where the Canucks would be if they had taken that approach. You look at the seasons where the Canucks were very clearly out of the playoff race, things like the Macklin Celebrini season, the Connor Bedard year. Actually, not the Celebrini season, I should clarify. That was the playoff year. The previous year, the Connor Bedard year, they were right there. They were right in the race for the spot that would end up being the draft pick for Connor Bedard. But rather than taking that as a sign that they needed to rebuild, that they needed to trade players and veterans out, including JT Miller, that was the year they were thinking about trading JT Miller as well. They held on to most of their chips, and they ended up just getting far enough out that they were about 10th, that they had the 10th best odds, took themselves completely out of the Bedard lottery. And wouldn't you know it, the Chicago Blackhawks won that draft, and in a spot that the Canucks had held, I believe, at one point at their absolute lowest, they were in the Chicago Blackhawks spot that won the lottery. And if they had taken that time to realize that they needed to get younger and fast, they might be looking at a completely different situation, a situation where Hughes is still here, where you might have a lot of other younger guys. Forget even Connor Bedard. You look at all of the other young players you could have had if they had stockpiled picks sooner. Now, it's all coming to roost now, with where they have lost the best defenseman in franchise history, and they are staring down the barrel of a rebuild that they should have taken on a long, long time ago. Jason Bruff asked Patrick Alvin point blank, if we have a culture problem. Seems like that might be the case, especially Stanch pointing out how removed from the community team has been in recent years. I posted that clip on Twitter from the Zoom press conference. And yeah, they do have a culture problem. And I talked about this actually on the C4 podcast very recently, how whenever people talk about rebuilds, the big knock against them and that people have is that you don't want to start a losing culture, that you don't want to build this identity of losing games all the time. When have the Canucks been building a winning culture is my question. They haven't even really lost enough to build a losing culture. They have none. They have no culture whatsoever. The culture that they have is toxic. If anything, it's just a toxic culture. No matter wins or losses, it doesn't seem to matter. They seem to be rather than a group of an actual team that is pulling in the same direction for a common goal. It is often felt in recent years that the Canucks are a bunch of individuals, that they are just pulling to play in the National Hockey League, that it's not about pride in the Canucks uniform. It's not pride in winning for this market. It is just playing for the amount of money on your contract. It's playing out that whatever time you have here until you can go somewhere else and make more money and make better term. And that seems to be the issue with this Canucks team. Is it's a team of individuals. It's a team that doesn't have a true identity. It's a team that doesn't actually see themselves as one worth competing for and one worth trying to build into something greater. It just seems like everyone has resigned themselves to the fact that they're just here to run out the clock essentially and run out their contract until they can go get a payday somewhere else. And yeah, they have a complete culture issue. And that starts from ownership. That starts from the fact that this team has consistently refused to do things the right way over and over again. Like, look at just a great example is the seats at Rogers Arena. There's a whole section of seats of the old maroon seats because they didn't want to pony up to do it properly. Instead of getting all the seats in on time and getting them installed, they made sure to they took the cheapest road possible to just putting in as many cup holders as they needed for as they could do for one game. They have that whole section of seats that's not going to be done until February. They have been promising to put in those seats for years, and they couldn't even finish putting them in on time. They didn't even want to go in and finish them during the preseason. They've just left them as, oh, sorry, though, if you're sitting in that section, too bad. You have the old seats until February because they don't do anything right. There are things like it took them forever to fix the scoreboard. They finally did it. The scoreboard looks great, but they played a whole season where the board was glitching. The ribbon, the LED boards panels around the rink were like glitching out during games. It was because they just didn't want to have to pay for one until they absolutely needed to pay for one. And things like the renovations, things like everything around this team is done by the seat of their pants with no actual plan in place, no pride in the team, no pride in the organization, no pride in being a Vancouver Canuck. And that's the organizational that's the organization that they have built, that ownership had from the top down has let seep into this organization. And that's why even when there's the issue with the players, it's hard to really fault them on just going the course that was set for them by their higher ups. The practice facility. This was a problem that should have been sorted out a freaking decade ago. And they're still here talking about how, oh, we're so close. Oh, we're looking at places. We're gonna finalize something soon. And then it amounts to nothing. All they do is kill and waste time. And because you know why? Because they feel deep down that people will come back, that people don't care, and that they will always be able to make as much money and as much money as humanly possible off of this hockey team, and that people will just shut up and take it. It doesn't matter how good the team is. People will always come back. They had season ticket holders installing them too, like they were getting volunteer labor for the damn thing too, and can't even secure inventory to fix it. I will take that into consideration. Because I don't know, I would have to confirm that myself before I will put that claim out there. But I hadn't heard that before, so I will look into that. But yeah, the Canucks have done so many things poorly, and when I look at the fact that they have lost Quinn Hughes, the best defenseman in franchise history, the franchise leader in points, this was a player that should have been part of a fantastic hockey team, a team that competed for Stanley Cups and probably won one. And Quinn Hughes is a player that, when it's all said and done, when his career is over, not only should have probably finished his career a Vancouver Canuck, we should have been able to talk about when he retires, getting his jersey retired in the rafters, what his legacy in Vancouver being one of the greatest defensemen to ever play the game. And yet it's done. After 8 years, we didn't even get to see him truly in his complete prime. It's over because the Canucks couldn't build a team around him, and I don't blame him for wanting out. I don't blame him for wanting to go to a situation where he could play for a contender. Heck, the fact that he's going to the Minnesota Wild, a team that has routinely not done much in the Stanley Cup playoffs, is an indictment on where the Canucks are at. You made the Minnesota Wild look like a better destination, like a better organization to be in, a better winning culture. And that's not even really a huge knock against the Wild. That's just the fact is they have not been a team that has been consistently in the playoff hunt, or at least contending for a Stanley Cup over the years. They're kind of a team that they're the team that the Canucks have wanted to be, really. If we think about it, they're a team that is just always kind of hovering in that wild card spot, kind of hoping to just get lucky to be there. And Quinn Hughes would rather go there and rather end up there than in the situation that the Canucks are currently in, which is dead last in the NHL. And the Canucks and ownership, management only have themselves to blame. I know at least Canucks Clay was there, but might have been the same situation all season ticket holders, but he had pictures up somewhere. Maybe that was something that happened. Yeah, I'd have to take a look. But the one thing I remember with that is the cup holders, where not every in the preseason, not every seat had cup holders. Only some of them did. I think they're all done now. But I was wondering, oh, that's weird. Maybe they were just doing it for certain sections, but no, it just turned out they just didn't pay people to come in to finish putting the cup holders in. So, but in the preseason, I think parts of the regular season, some people just didn't have cup holders in their seats right away, which is, again, just short-sighted, not doing things properly the first time, rather just dragging it out for no reason. Let's talk about where the Canucks are at currently. They are dead last in the National Hockey League. They are finally, seemingly, committing to a rebuild. They talk in the press conference about rebuilding, whether or not now they can. Again, they're claiming they've been on this rebuild path currently for a while now. They haven't been. We all know this is brand new, but the good news is, if you want to look at a bright side, if there is a bright side to be seen out of all of this, it is that the Canucks finally seem ready to accept a true rebuild. And that is not nothing. It is something that the Canucks have, again, needed to do for a long time. There's a lot of things that the Canucks have needed to do for a long time, whether it's this, whether it's the practice facility, whether it's, other renovations, getting back into the community again. These are all things that the Canucks have kind of put off over time. The best time to do them is always now. It's not later. It's always now. And for the Canucks to be willing to accept that this is the time to rebuild and actually put together a serious teardown and build for the long term, for the future, is good. And that's something we should be happy about. And it's hard to be happy about that today because the wound is still fresh from Quinn Hughes being traded. But you look at the return that they've got. You get a player in Liam Ogren who has experience playing with Jonathan Lecker-Mackey at the Worlds, and who's going to be a good forward in the future for this Canucks team in theory. You look at a player like Marco Rossi, a bit younger. He's kind of a guy that you probably is more likely to flip for the future. Again, like, you're not Marco Rossi, if he's part of the Canucks for this term, likely won't be part of a team that does a lot of winning over the next little while. But he is somebody that the team is very excited about, and why wouldn't he be? He's a good young player. This is a tweet from Michael Russo, quote, "Just talked to Marco Rossi for a while. He sensed this coming and heard Vancouver was interested, but it was still a shock when Wild GM Bill Guerin called. He thanked Minnesota profusely for everything it's done for him, and especially when he had his heart ailment. Can't wait to get to Van." That is right. He did have there was the heart issue, I believe, stemming from, do not quote me on this. I believe it was a long COVID thing. I don't know if that's for sure. Don't quote me on that. I could be totally off base. But yes, Marco Rossi did deal with some things. He was a player that a person that you guys will remember, Judd Brackett quite liked. And that was a big and they took him for that reason. He has 13 points in 17 games for the Wild this year. He is currently injured, hasn't played since November. Whether or not the Canucks could whether or not he could end up being a player long-term for the Canucks remains to be seen. At the very least, he fills a role at center as a young center at 24 years old that the Canucks desperately need currently. So he'll fill that, at least in the short term. Maybe he's a player that you end up flipping for picks later down the line. Probably not this year, but in the future, especially as we look at a team that is, again, not going to be competitive for a while. Steve Byam, if I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that name incorrectly. I'm learning about these players as we go here a little bit. Defenseman. I know the Wild were very excited about him. He's 20 years old. He's from Laguna Niguel, California player. As someone who played there, you'll love that. 14 points, 31 games as a defenseman. That's as a 20-year-old defenseman. That is not nothing. He will certainly be a piece to the puzzle as part of this whatever this next core is, this next chapter of the Vancouver Canucks. He is clearly someone that Canucks were really bullish about getting a young defenseman back for Hughes. And he fits that role. He fits that role perfectly for them. And Liam Ogren, he is in a 2004 birth, which just makes me feel very, very old. He's 21 years old, from Sweden, played on the U20 World Juniors team with Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Has played 18 games this year. Doesn't have a point yet for the Wild. Has played 9 in the AHL with Iowa. He has 5 points there. The Canucks have gotten a bunch of young players that aren't necessarily bona fide, like cornerstones of a franchise. But again, I would say that that's totally okay. Maybe you look at like Zeev Byam as a player that is kind of a more close to bona fide as a long-term prospect for you. But even then, I would say that that's not really the point with this trade. This trade is about getting young players, again, who could potentially be part of something bigger long-term. There's these guys seemingly will bring good character, hopefully will bring a fresh character and a better outlook to the locker room than the Canucks have currently had. From the chat, I feel like I became numb to the idea that Quinn was gone in the summer, so I'm very fine with this return. Yeah, you should be fine with the return. I think there is nothing wrong with this return. Apparently, Wild fans believe the Canucks fleeced them, which I think it's been talked about many times before. I think everyone overrates their own prospects. So I feel like the Wild fans at all being upset that they got Quinn Hughes is very funny to me. I think that they will come to realize that will make their team better in the short term, much more than these younger guys were going to. So for the Canucks, the value is then you have these young players, you have a first round pick, which if the Wild have done their due diligence, won't be a very high pick. But again, you want as many kicks at the first round as possible, especially in a deep draft like this one coming up. And in one where the Canucks are gunning for Gavin McKenna as a potential future winger for them, you might want to get a center with that first round pick. And looking at what they get for him, I think this trade overall works for them. There was definitely, I'm sure that looking at all the other teams that were kind of in the mix for them, I don't think any other team could have offered them quite as good a package as the Wild were going to. Like, New Jersey, if New Jersey was going to get involved in this kind of a pick, who are you going to want back? Probably Luke Hughes. If anybody, that was probably your pick. That was probably the guy you'd want back, which defeats the whole purpose of trading to New Jersey. So Quinn can play with his brothers. It would have been very funny to trade the brothers for each other. But at the end of the day, Minnesota offers clearly the best package, clearly the most likely group that can be part of a long-term rebuild and a part of a refresh. Where the Canucks go from here is they have to start trading more players off this roster as we go look at as I pull up Cap Friendly here. I mean, first of all, some are very obvious, like Kiefer Sherwood is a player that if you can sell high on him right now, you absolutely should. They absolutely should do that. Evander Kane is a player the Canucks should probably get off their roster as soon as humanly possible, especially with these young guys coming in. There's no need to have Evander Kane here anymore. That ship has sailed. Get him out of here. Connor Garland is a player that I would like. You would like to keep. He hasn't even, his extension for the next 6 years on a $6 million cap hit hasn't even kicked in yet, but he's a player that lots of teams would covet and lots of teams would give a very hefty package for in itself. That is a player you're probably looking to trade as well. You could even make the question of whether or not maybe I don't necessarily think it's a guarantee that they should trade Elias Pettersson, but it's a much easier debate now that Quinn is out the door. That's kind of the real thing about this, is that if Quinn Hughes can get traded by the Canucks, every other veteran on this team, no one is untouchable. He was the closest thing to untouchable, and he is gone. So you shouldn't have any issues with any of the other players potentially leaving for a package. The idea now is to keep the young guys and develop those young players into something long term. Guys like Jonathan Lekermacki, time to give them more ice time to give, the likes of Vilander, Byam, Elias Pettersson, give all of those guys way more time to go and start moving out some veterans. Maybe a guy like Phil Hronek. Maybe you want to keep him around just to have some veteran presence on your blue line, but he was brought in to be Quinn Hughes' partner. What do you do now? Hughes is gone. So what sense do you have in keeping him, especially when he's playing so well? He is the type of player that a lot of teams, probably, especially a playoff team, would look at him and go, that's a final piece for our team to win a Stanley Cup. So you look at everyone is up for grabs now. That's the long and short of it. It is everyone who is not a young player, is not a prospect, is up for grabs for this team. And that's the way it should be. Now, as for the Quinn Hughes side of things, Wyatt talked about this briefly today. Hughes was a captain for the last few years. It, especially this season, became very clear that he was not really up to the task of being a captain. And I'm not going to say this market is tough. I don't believe this market is, frankly, that tough, or at least as tough as people make it out to be. I think that the Canucks market, as Vancouver as a hockey market, is very easy to make people happy if you just win games and you're just consistently in the mix. When they didn't start winning games this year, there were lots of times where Hughes's body language and his not his effort, he always put in his best effort, but more or less, but there were definitely times where it looked like he took a shift off, where it looked like he was just frustrated and his responses after games were not good enough. Quote, media isn't tough from a loud brother. Media isn't tough, but fan reaction is fickle. But I think that's true. Fan reaction is definitely going to tilt towards more reactive, especially when it comes to wins and losses. Like, there are lots of people who live or die by every individual game, where they will say the team is a cup contender one day and is terrible the next, and they need to trade everybody the next. The truth is, the Vancouver market has never been easier to win in. It's never been easier to be a Vancouver Canuck in this market. And that goes kind of back to the whole toxic locker room culture and whatever culture the Canucks have currently. Like, it has never been easier for a player to hide from the pressure and hide from the media in this market as it currently is. It is very players are, frankly, let's not mince words here. They're coddled. It's very easy for players to avoid any hard questions because of the culture the Canucks have built around the team. Let's see. Toronto and maybe Edmonton are really the only super tough markets, in my opinion, for media. Toronto is 10 ply. Lots of lots of Neanderthals who want them to be tougher. I'm not going to comment too much on what other markets are, because I'm not there. But yes, like, in terms of, like, you look at a market like Toronto, I look at some of the questions that media are able to ask in other markets, beyond Toronto and Edmonton, and think about how, if they asked that question in Vancouver, the Canucks people would be so mad that question got asked, and would be like, how dare you ask them that kind of a question? And frankly, some fans do it too, where they'll be like mad when the media person asks a sort of tough question. We saw it today with Jason Bruff asking an incredibly good question of just straight up, do you have a culture problem? And Patrick Allvin kind of danced around it. Full respect to Jason for asking that question. The Mount Bruff eruption, basically, of being like, yeah, you have this locker room problem. What's the issue? And you saw Allvin kind of dance around it and be like, I don't think we have an issue. Yes, they do. One of the things I think back to recently as well is the When a bunch of the Canucks went to the BC Children's, or not BC Children, sorry, or might have been or Canuck Place. They went to talk to the sick kids, and that really stuck out to me because the amount of times the Canucks have done that in recent years, I could count on one hand. That used to be a regular occurrence. You used to see players like the Sedins and Luongo consistently be in the community, be active in the community, not because they had to be, because they wanted to be. And they felt it was their due diligence as Vancouver Canucks because they took pride in the uniform. They took pride in being a part of the city. The Sedins and Luongo and Bieksa, and you go down the list, they understood what it meant to be part of the community, what it meant to be a Vancouver Canuck. I'm not sure that Quinn Hughes fully got it. He got it in bits. He got the, oh, it's great to win here part. But outside of that, it never felt like under his leadership, that the Canucks were all that active in the community and were making a conscious effort to be a part of the bigger picture. And I'm not blaming Quinn for that. Again, that starts at the top. But it was a steep departure from what the Canucks were from, even with Bo Horvat at the helm, or going back to the Sedins. Yeah, we were so blessed to have guys like the Sedins. Yes. And you know what? The Sedins learned that from players like Marcus Naslund, who learned it from Trevor Linden. It was passed on. It was this torch of this means something. Putting on this uniform, being a part of this organization means something bigger than just winning hockey games. Luongo as well. Luongo is my favorite player of all time. When I was a fan of the team, Lou was active in the community. He took it on upon himself, and no one got asked harder questions in this market and in the media than Roberto Luongo at his peak in this city. And he took those arrows like a champ. He understood how to work in this market. He understood how to be the best player and to be a true Vancouver Canuck. I don't know if any player besides the Sedins, I don't think any player aside from the Sedins understood what it meant to be a Vancouver Canuck quite like Roberto Luongo. Quinn Hughes did not fully get it. And a lot of that is due to what he was given and the organization he was handed, one that is seen as a country club, that is run very much like the players can just do whatever they want. There is no need to be active in the community. There are some players that do get it. I'm not going to say all of them have contributed to a country club atmosphere. One player that I think has done a very good job over the years and has been active in the community is Brock Besser. And there's a reason why, as far as the veterans go, he's one of the few players I would say you should absolutely keep for the long term and is worth staying here, especially on his long-term contract, just because of his understanding of what it means to be a Vancouver Canuck and how much he likes and clearly appreciates and understands what it means to be here. I'm curious if Suzuki, Matthews, McKinnon, and other stars have the same expectations. I can't speak on McKinnon. I do believe that Suzuki and Matthews are active in the community in Toronto and Montreal. The Canadians have the Canadians Foundation. I believe a lot of the Leafs go to the sick kids every year. There's even little things like one of the things that I've seen the Leafs do that I have always loved. And I know we don't like to give kudos to the Leafs here too often, but I will here, is every year the Leafs do this one thing where the one practice where everyone gets dressed at the Scotiabank Center. They and then they hop on the TTC, the Toronto version of the SkyTrain. They head down to Nathan Phillips Square and they skate out in public, and they take the train with all the other people in their full gear with other like commuters and other things, and they just go skate out there just to be involved in the community and to kind of show that reminder of, yes, this is a team for the people. And fans go and watch, they sign autographs, they skate a little practice. It's not a practice that's going to actually do anything for their season. They're just doing it to be active and in the community. And that has been lost here in Vancouver. From Aaron Jensen, I also wonder if part of them not being active in the community is because they came into their own during COVID and got used to not having to do those things. I do think that has a lot to do with where the Canucks are at right now. Um, and that goes to from the top as well, because during COVID is when the Canucks cut a lot of and furloughed a lot of employees, like a lot of the legacy of the Canucks and the legacy of the Canucks organization was severed during COVID because a lot of longtime employees got let go to save money. And the newer employees are picking up a legacy that is not there anymore. And they don't really know, there's not as many people there to say, well, this is how we did this back before COVID, or this is how we did this in the past, because so many of those threads are lost. It's this disconnect in the tree of succession in the Vancouver Canucks organization. And that has spread through all departments. And that's not to say the people who are there aren't doing the best they can. They're doing a very good job. I'm not going to sewer any lower level employee about where the Canucks are at, but there are little things that you notice here and there that I think a organization that hadn't made those cuts and hadn't completely cleaned house, more or less completely cleaned house during COVID, would be doing differently and would be doing better than the resources the current Canucks organization employees have at their disposal right now. Most of the Leafs team, including Matthews, go to Sick Kids, and he does the skate design stuff with the kids from Sick Kids. Yes, like Matthews understands the assignment, and that is because the Leafs have done a very good job of understanding this is what it means to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, and the players that stay there and want to be there do a very good job of it. William Nylander is another player who I think understands how to be a Toronto Maple Leaf better than maybe Matthews does. He's a very good Toronto Maple Leaf. He knows how to play the game. Vancouver, there just isn't those players. I also think they really lost the community vibe when Stetcher, Tanev, and Toffoli didn't get re-signed. That too. Like, again, it all comes back to saving money during the pandemic, of losing those threads and losing that history to the team over time. Ironically, I think we can still pin this on ownership in that MLSE understands how philanthropy is an essential aspect of fan engagement. And it does seem like the Canucks are maybe understanding that again with the return to Canuck Place and returning to being more active in the community again. I think they're maybe getting it a little late. Like, again, the best time to make those changes is now. The worst time to do it is later. And the outdoor practice for the Leafs, they also have kids with disabilities come and do a skate with the team as well. Exactly. Like, this is what the Canucks are missing. They have gone from being a team, they have gone fully into, we are a business, we are a product, you should pay to come watch us and like it. They don't see themselves as part of the community. There's a reason, or they see themselves as, frankly, above the community. There's a reason, I think part of the reason why they are making this effort again now is because they're finally kind of being threatened a little bit in terms of the organization and where they're at with things like the Whitecaps doing so well. The Golden Eyes have been active in the community. The Golden Eyes held a camp today with players teaching young girls how to play hockey and running through drills over at the Agrodome today. That is the kind of thing that the Canucks have not done as good a job at over recent years. And hopefully this whole situation will be a reset, a complete organizational reset. Obviously, I worry and I'm concerned if that is totally doable under this current ownership. I do wonder if that is even possible under the current ownership group, or if we have to wait for someone else potentially to come in and buy the team and make those changes. I would like to believe that it doesn't matter who's in charge and that this is a full organizational reset. This is understanding that everything needs to change from top to bottom, and we need to be more in the community. We need to bring pride back to the uniform again. And hopefully that process started today with this trade of Quinn Hughes to the Minnesota Wild. And as we start fresh here in Vancouver, I think we are approaching an hour of this stream. And, oh no, does that mean that the Canucks need Lou Lamoriello? No, they don't. I'm going to say that right now. No, they do not need Lou Lamoriello. That is absolutely not the case. we shall see where the front office goes. I know some people have talked about why this current front office was even allowed to make the Quinn Hughes trade, because you're not going to let a brand new general manager, even if you are deciding to let someone new take charge, you're not going to make them make that choice. Make their first decision be, okay, now you have to decide how to trade Quinn Hughes and to get a good package for him. That is not a task you should be giving to a GM on his first day, or his or her first day. So it is better that the current front office makes that decision and gets at least a little bit of a chance to clean up the mess that they have created, and hopefully we see a better Vancouver Canucks franchise down the line. If they lose games here and there this season, if they lose a lot of games this year, so be it. I would rather them build for the future, take the long path, and do it right, as opposed to taking shortcuts to try to build a playoff team now and try to squeak into the playoffs again. Do the right thing. They seem to be doing the right thing and building for the future. And with that, I think it is time to end this stream. Thank you, everyone who has watched. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this stream, if you enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe. I'm trying to get more to 100 followers. I'm trying to get more followers for this channel so I can do more videos like this. One thing I will let you know, if you're currently watching the live stream, is I do have a video coming out later this week where I talked to Kristen Campbell, goaltender for the Vancouver Golden Eyes, about her new goalie mask, her new equipment. If that's something that you're interested in, we have a whole interview with her coming out on this channel that I'm very excited about. I'm going to be doing more Stanchies pregame videos. Wyatt and I are going to be doing more videos in general, especially with where the Canucks are at currently over the course of this season. We got to make it more fun for you guys to stay along with us over the course of the next 3 months. We're going to do our absolute best to make the Stanchies and make content that is fun and enjoyable and make this season worth your while, even if it very much seems like it won't be on the ice. At least we could do off of it. If you want to check out my writing work, you can check out not Lock in the Grease. I don't use that website anymore. Lockinthegrease.substack.com is where I cover the Golden Eyes. I do the Goldies after every Golden Eyes game. It's the Stanchies, but for the Golden Eyes. We're having a lot of fun. I've been at training camp with a lot of the players, training camp practices, talking to players quite regularly. A very fun team to cover, and I hope you guys will go subscribe to that. And you can see all my writing work on CanucksArmy.com as well, where I write the Stanchies as well as other articles. I'm sure I will be writing an article about the Quinn Hughes trade later tonight as well. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.